September 1997. Still working at not Frame Art, Illyria Arts. For a little while longer, I'm at Illyria Arts. I haven't started working at Frame Art yet. We'll get to that eventually. Still have no specific memories, but we're getting closer. 2 more videos. Or technically 1 more after this one. And then we're going to get some memories, going to get some crazy stuff. But right now, let's just talk about the books that I read in September of 1997. And we start with Survival Games by Charles Gaines. And this is just a book. There's 2 couples, best friends, all 4 of them. And they go on a vacation, a weekend getaway. And while the husbands are out hunting, their wives have stayed back at the cabin that they're staying at, and they get kidnapped. And so the husbands have to use all their skills to rescue their wives. There are some twists, like there's some secrets, and the couples, at least the husbands, the way it's put in the description, they own a business called Survival Games, which is a paintball adventure thing, and so they have all these survivalist skills they're going to use to rescue their wives. It's exactly what it sounds like. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's not like hunting humans for sport, but there's survivalist kind of stuff going on to rescue these women. So Survival Games by Charles Gaines. Next up, we have Green War by Stephen Gould and Laura J. Mixon. Stephen Gould, the author of Jumper, really great book. But this book, Green War, our main character is a woman who is, I think she's CEO of this eco company, and they have this facility offshore called Gulfstream 1, I think. And basically she has to deal with a hurricane and eco-terrorists that have a tie to her past, and politics and all sorts of stuff. It's not preachy, but it's also, I don't think it's as good as Stephen Jay Gould's other stuff. Jumper's really good. His other book that dealt with time travel and stuff, I can't remember the name of it, that was really good. This one was okay, but just okay. Number 3, Babyhood by Paul Reiser. Typical comedy book written by a comedian. In this case, focusing on being a parent, taking care of small children. Paul Reiser is a pretty funny guy. It's a funny book. He's great in Aliens. I really don't have much else to say about it. It's Babyhood by Paul Reiser. Then we have McNally's Gamble by Lawrence Sanders, part of the Archie McNally mystery series. I don't think they would fall under thriller. They're too lighthearted, I think, for that. In this one, this woman might be buying a Fabergé egg. She wants McNally to look into it, make sure it's authentic. Her children think that it's a scam, want McNally to put the kibosh on the deal. And there's twists and turns and thrills and funny stuff. It's a great lighthearted series, and they're a lot of fun. Archie McNally's a really fun character, and usually some pretty interesting side characters in these stories. But let's move on to Still Life by Rick Hansen. Rick Hansen feels like someone who's trying to be Carl Hyacin. His character, let's see, I have to look, is Adam McCleet. He's an ex-cop who's now a sculptor, and he's going to, I believe, Taos, New Mexico to show off some of his art at an art show or something, but he becomes a suspect in a murder, because that's what always happens when this kind of character goes to a new town. Filled with quirky characters. I've read a couple of Rick Hansen. I think the last time I talked about one, I said I didn't know if I read any more. Well, apparently I have. but definitely not at the level of Carl Hyacin. But it might work for some people. It's a quirky mystery with just bizarre characters. Then, now, we have a book I did not have to look up, although I could have for specifics like character names and stuff. But Meg by Steve Alton, the first in his long series of books about Megalodon, the prehistoric sharks. I really enjoyed this book. It's sharks eating people. In this case, a giant shark, and it was not the best of this kind of book, but it was fun, and we had, I think, a decent explanation for how the shark ends up at the surface, essentially, and interesting characters. I have not seen the movie. I think it's quite different than the book from the things that I have seen. I should watch it. I like Jason Statham, and it's a giant shark eating people. But I think the ending of this one is crazy over the top. But it was a lot of fun. It's a giant shark eating people. Fun stuff. And I think it was new at the time that I read it. We're going to get to at least one more. I know I read the sequel. I don't know how far into the series I went before I got kind of bored with it. But Meg by Steve Alton. Fun book. Then we have Foundation and Empire by Isaac Asimov. Part of the Great Foundation series from the great Isaac Asimov. We're still sort of at that point where the Empire is crumbling. It's on its last legs, and the Foundation is trying to just basically move the galaxy, the universe, whatever you want to say, forward. There's this new antagonist named Mule. I don't remember the timelines of all of Isaac Asimov's books. I know that the robot books tie in somehow, but I don't remember if the Foundation books take place so far in the future that robots no longer exist. Because when I was reading the synopsis of this, I was like, "Oh, is Mule a robot? And people don't know about robots anymore?" I don't know. It's pure speculation. I could be completely wrong. The robots could be so far in the future past Foundation, but I don't think it is, because I think Foundation is so far in the future. Either way, Foundation and Empire, fantastic book. Isaac Asimov, a series I will be rereading one of these days. Then we go very, very lighthearted with The Tick, Mighty Blue Justice by Greg Hyland. This is a simple coffee table book. Not sure if that's the best descriptor, but basically it's just a very colorful, bright, picture-filled book with character profiles of the characters from The Tick. And I think it's based more on the cartoon than the comic book. But profiles of The Tick, all the supporting characters, good guys, bad guys, profiles of equipment and things like that, and just fun stuff. If you're a fan of The Tick, I love the comic book. The comic book is absolutely hilarious. The original stuff. I didn't watch the cartoon much. I did watch the live action show, which I enjoyed. The first one with what's his name? The guy that plays Putty in Seinfeld played the Tick. I thought he did a great job. Can't think of his name off the top of my head. I do know Peter Serafinowicz plays the Tick in the Amazon Prime show, but I haven't seen that except for the first episode. But I enjoyed the original live action Tick. I just always remember, because I get migraines, I always remember when the Tick has a headache and he doesn't know what it is. And he says, "It feels like my brain is going to have a baby." And Arthur says, "Well, that's a headache." And he says, "They have a name for it?" It's funny to me. His delivery is much better than mine. But anyway, that's the Tick, Mighty Blue Justice, Greg Hyland. Now, we're getting to some good stuff. Not that some of this other stuff hasn't been fantastic, like the Isaac Asimov, but Of Saints and Shadows by Christopher Golden. This is the first in a series. I picked this up because of what Mike Mignola said in his introduction to the first Hellboy novel, which was written by Christopher Golden. Even though I'd read Christopher Golden stuff in the past, his name didn't really register until I read that Hellboy book. Mike Mignola talked about him writing crazy monster action in his original stuff. So I picked up Of Saint and Shadows. The main character is Peter Octavian, who is a private investigator. He's also a vampire. So there's this secret Catholic Vatican organization that hunts vampires. And they have this book that I believe is called the Book of Shadows that gets lost. So they're looking for it. They want to wipe out all vampires. Peter Octavian, even though he's simply trying to blend in with people, wants to save vampires, at least the good ones. But this is not your typical like vampire private investigator book. It is a huge adventure with some crazy stuff in it. There's a great bit about vampires and why they have the weaknesses that they do, and this leads into the next. I don't think it has a cliffhanger, but it does lead into the next two books. I thought the original trilogy was almost a perfect trilogy in the sense that they all work perfectly together, and there's this great progression, which once I get to the other books on here, things are going to get a little spoilery, but I highly recommend Of Saints and Shadows by Christopher Golden. And if you get the new editions, if they're still available, the last versions that I saw, if you put all the book covers together, they'll form a pentagram, which is pretty cool. I need to get all of the series. I haven't read all. I think there's 7 books at this point, and I have not read all 7. But fantastic book. The book that really put Christopher Golden on my radar. All right, only 2 more. I don't know why my thumb was sticking out. Only 2 more. And we have the penultimate book, Dirty Jokes and Beer by Drew Carey, which I have marked as fiction/nonfiction. And this is, well, Drew Carey. And the first part, I think maybe the biggest part of the book, is that it's a little bit biography, but it's definitely comedy. He's telling, dirty jokes. But he's also talking about like behind the scenes in Hollywood, things he had to deal with on the Drew Carey show. But very funny stuff. And then the second part of the book is short stories. Drew Carey just wanted to write some short stories. And so there you go. I cannot remember what I think of the short stories, if they were any good, if they were funny, if they were poignant. But I've always liked Drew Carey. I thought he was funny. I watched the Drew Carey show all the time. Plus, he's local. So, Dirty Jokes and Beer by Drew Carey. And then we finished the month, the only book I still have a copy of, with Prisoner's Hope by David Feintuck, the third book in the Seafort saga. And in this one, Nicholas Seafort is a captain now. And it says he's assigned to Hope Nation while recovering from injuries. He's liaison to the wealthy planters of the colony planet, but there's been a savage alien attack on the UN space flotilla, and so the colonists decide to rebel. It's the perfect time. So Nicholas Seafort is trying to deal with a rebellion, deal with alien attacks, and the last line on the back cover copy: "But to save the world, Nicholas Seafort must forsake his vows and commit an unthinkable suicidal act of high treason." Um, Another fantastic book in the series, and one of the things that I really enjoy about these books is that the author will go to places you do not expect, very devastatingly emotional, dark places. He's putting Nicholas Seafort through his paces. Did not intend to rhyme, but just great science fiction with great characters and great emotional stakes. So, Prisoner's Hope, David Feintuck, is how I finished September of 1997. So there you go. That is what I read back then. My question for this, I'm going to go with two questions. So I'm not sure the first one, anybody who's watching this, well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know all of you. I don't know all your likes and dislikes. My first question is, are you a fan of The Tick? And if so, or if you know The Tick, do you know him from the original comic books? Do you know him from the cartoon, or the original live action show, or the Amazon Prime live action show with Peter Serafinowicz? I just love saying Peter Serafinowicz. So, are you familiar with The Tick? Are you a fan of The Tick? Do you not care about The Tick? As I mentioned, huge fan of the original comics. I thought they were absolutely hilarious. They played on comic book tropes. I think I've mentioned before. I know I've talked about this to other people. I just can't remember if I've mentioned it on these videos, but I feel like I have. There's a part where there's a character that's supposed to be like Superman, and he and the Tick are fighting. Well, he's in his reporter disguise, and he and the Tick are fighting, and his glasses fall off, and the Tick is like, I don't remember the character's names, where did Clark Kent go? What are you doing here, Superman? And the guy just goes like this. And the Tick is like, oh, there you are, Clark Kent. Did you see Superman? He was here a minute ago. Something like that, but I thought that was very funny. And Paul the Samurai, I believe, came from the Tick, and you had the man-eating cow, and just absolutely hilarious comic book. And as I said, I enjoyed the live action TV show, the original one. But what do you think? Do you not care? So, second question, for those of you who have no opinion on the Tick whatsoever, have you read Meg? Have you seen the movie? What are your thoughts on that? And of course, I shared my thoughts on the book. I enjoyed it. A lot of good giant shark killing people, eating people action. Not enough to sustain me through the whole series. I think there was just a point, I don't remember which, if it was book 3 or book 4, I just was getting bored with it. But I did enjoy the original. I have not seen the movie. I've listened to podcasts about it. I've seen videos about it. So I do know quite a bit that goes on in it. And maybe I'll see it someday. But what about you? Are you familiar with Meg? Have you read the books? Do you like giant sharks eating people? And of course, Meg with Jason Statham, not to be confused with the Asylum produced, maybe, Megalodon, and there's like a whole series of Megalodon movies. But this is the big budget action adventure Meg. Let me know. what you think about The Tick, what you think about Meg. Let me know all that down in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.